in one corner, weighing in on the wonderful absurdity of masked wrestling superhero spies and over-the-top campy tropes. Hailing originally from Southern California and now dwelling in Nashville, Tennessee, wearing an orange mask with a graying skunk-striped beard, Luchador Gringo! And in the other corner, weighing in on wrestling werewolves, violent vampires, and karate-chopping killer robots, from St. Paul, Minnesota, wearing a white mask and black hat with a pearly beard of ivory, El Mayo! Get ready for Luchador Gringo and El Mayo, a Lucha Libre Cinema podcast.
Hola, Michael. How are you?
Hola, Dan. I'm doing really well.
It's been a while. We've been on sort of a little hiatus. Life got a little complicated, but we're back. We're finally back in the ring. We're here to talk about Luchador Cinema and ready to roll. How about you?
Yeah, and I'm excited about our guest.
Yes, we've got a guest again. We had Jay Gonzo on previously discussing his work, and now we've got author and former wrestler Matt Wallace. How are you, Matt?
I'm doing great, guys. I'm really happy to be here. Psyched to talk about some Luchador Cinema with y'all.
Thank you for joining us. I believe we are the only, at least English-speaking Luchador podcast out there, and we do focus on the movies as opposed to the sport. Because, damn it, those movies are fantastic.
Oh, yeah, they absolutely are. I love the whole genre to death. It's one of the things I like. I love wrestling, obviously, but it's one of the things that takes Lucha Libre to another level for me. And also just the cultural saturation, in particular, the comics, just the whole cultural aspect of it is amazing.
Exactly. Amazing is the perfect word for it. I'm hoping that, with this podcast and, wrestling is huge. I mean, there's no doubt, I grew up in the 80s when, the WWE.
F at that point.
F at the point? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I love, and I mean this sincerely, I love that you don't know what it is at this point in time, because I can't stand their product now, so that makes me happy that you have no idea.
Yeah, I have no idea what they're calling it now, but I remember watching it as a kid back then. I fell out of wrestling pretty much when The Rock quit.
Did The Rock ever really quit? Is he ever really done? I think that's a question for another episode.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I feel it. It's like that late 90s, extreme late 90s, early 2000s kind of era.
I mean, the Rock era of wrestling was the storylines in that were a lot of fun. And,
oh yeah.
But I'm not a huge wrestling fan today. I mean, obviously, having this podcast and following luchadors, some of it's starting to seep in, and I'm getting tweets and stuff on what's going on. I don't know much about it, but damn it, if I wish I could go back to the 60s and 70s and have a villa in Mexico where I could just absorb and understand Spanish better than I do, more than my 2 years of high school Spanish. Which all I can remember is pretty much Mas Cerveza, por favor.
Which, is all you need, really, for the weekend. So
well, that and Los Baños, so.
Well, yeah, once you have all the cerveza you need.
Exactly.
Yeah, one does follow the other, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's seriously, those luchador movies, especially when we talk about the crossovers with Santo and Blue Demon and Mil Mascaras, they are like the equivalent of today's Marvel Cinematic Universe, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. No, I have a buddy, Keith Rainville, who you may be familiar with. He used to do from Parts of the Magazine, which was the first English language luchador magazine. So blazing the same kind of trail you guys are now. And we did the Latino Comics Expo, and he had a whole presentation on exactly how luchador cinema and luchador genre is a total forerunner of everything we're seeing now in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And it absolutely was that. It was Mexican superheroes as, cultural and not political, but just like national icons and leaders, the same way the kind of Marvel heroes are in the Marvel movies. They become more than crime fighters. They become these amazing, heroic, iconic figures in culture and society.
Yeah, I mean, and probably the biggest of all was Santos.
Oh, yeah.
And what's your take on Santos, the legend, the myth, and the mythology around him?
I mean, El Santo, Blue Demon, those were the OG guys, and then along with Mil Mascaras. But for me, it really starts with Santo and Blue Demon. They were the Iron Man and Captain America of that era, to put it in kind of context for newer people who might not be familiar with the genre but do know Marvel movies. That's always what I kind of say to people, because they were the linchpins of the whole thing. They started it all. And I mean, in terms of wrestling and then the crossover and all that stuff, you look at that stuff now and a lot of people might say it's dated, especially the wrestling aspect of it compared to what we have going on now. But I think the movies actually hold up a lot better than the in-ring stuff really does, because the movies really convey more. If you go back and you watch a lucha match from the early 70s, late 60s, I don't think you'll be as sucked in if you're not deep into the genre as you will be if you watch these insanely awesome cheesy movies from the same period, because they just have so much more flavor. And they really convey the reality and the mythology that luchadors created. And that extended to the ring, but you don't get that from just seeing a lucha match. So if you watched a lucha movie, you totally get the world that they were creating with the wrestling in an arena. And it was all the same thing. It was all interwoven. That was the atmosphere. And those movies were a representation of how people saw Santo and Blue Demon. So you can't discount them, even if it might seem a little dated to some people going back now. They started it all. They were so exciting and enthralling. There hadn't been anything like that back in the day, So you really got to view it in that context.
I mean, I think it would be amazing to say, sit in the cinema and watch Santo fight Frankenstein's monster.
Oh yeah,
and
absolutely.
then the next weekend watch him wrestle in the ring in person.
Oh no, totally, and that's what I'm talking about. It's it really enhances the whole experience, because you kind of get the full picture of what you're watching. You're watching a superhero doing superhero shit, and everybody is buying into it. They're believing it wholesale. There wasn't even a suspension of disbelief back then, man. Then he really was that iconic kind of figure. People looked at him and said, that guy's a real goddamn superhero. They expected him to stop crime in real life, pretty much. It was really that real and that authentic within the culture back then.
Yeah, I've described him as, a cross between Batman and Elvis.
Yeah, that's definitely a good way to put it. He was Batman with pizzazz.
Yeah.
That's what Lucha Libre is, man. It's superheroes with pizzazz.
And the fact that these, they were humanized by, seeing them in the ring, and then they were superheroes, and not even just superheroes, but they were super spies, and they were crime fighters, and they were investigators, and they were, they were defenders against alien invasions, and I mean, they did it all.
What was amazing is it was a reflection. It was also a reflection of a culture that was going on in the rest of the world. In American culture as well. Whatever was hot at the time, that's what a luchador was going to do. If James Bond was the shit at the box office, Santo and Blue Demon were going to be spies. If cop shows were popular, they were going to be buddy cops busting bad guys in the streets. Those movies really were a reflection of whatever was really going on. It was hot in that kind of culture in movies and comics at the time, and in other places, and in Mexico.
Do you think that luchador formula could work now? I mean,
I think it has to evolve. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh no, you're going right where I was going, so go with it.
But yeah, I think it has to change and evolve. But man, I mean, lucha today is just so next level. You look at guys like Taurus and El Vikingo and these guys who are just doing these amazing, and they're still carrying on that's kind of otherworldly, larger than life, bigger than reality, things from the aerial moves they do to the fact you're wrestling a literal minotaur. They're keeping all that stuff going. And I think it totally has an immense place in culture and what we're doing now. I think you just kind of got to adapt to the times. It's not about B-movies and Grindhouse anymore. It's about online content and TikTok and all this other stuff. And I think lucha can find a niche anywhere because it's so vibrant and so captivating when it's done well.
But could we see them fighting monsters or being spies again?
I would love that, man. I don't see why not. I mean, I definitely think there's a place for that too, because you got that kind of almost self-aware genre now of superhero and sci-fi fantasy stuff that kind of knows what it is and plays on its own tropes. And I think that Lucha Libre could be very much like that too. It's not presented not in a super serious way, but more in a way of like, we know how ridiculous this all seems in a modern context, but you just got to go with it. And then it sort of like references that in itself and sort of is able to make fun of itself and kind of give people an excuse to buy into it and be okay with it. It's like, we're not sitting here telling you you're supposed to believe these guys in masks can beat up a werewolf. We're asking you to go with it because it's a good time. It's fun. Like, let's have some fun. Let's be silly.
I mean, Marvel Cinematic Universe aside, I think maybe as far as movies go, maybe the closest we have to that nowadays would be like the Fast and the Furious franchise.
I mean, yeah, in a way that it's so ridiculous that you understand that it's its own reality. It's not grounded in anything resembling real physics or real life, and that becomes what you like about it. It's so far past escapism. And I think that's a really good analogy, though, because I think Lucha can be the same way. It's that same kind of hyper reality that you just got to decide to buy into.
I mean, they went into space apparently, and I'm not a huge Fast and Furious fan, but I guess they went into space with the last one, and Helen Mirren was in it. So I mean, they could very well be fighting mummies next time.
Yeah, I mean, I think you get to a point where franchises where the only thing left to do is go into space. That's always how you know when a horror movie franchise is like reaches pinnacle is when the monster or their slasher goes into space.
Okay, now you got me thinking, let's get, Blue Demon Jr. versus Freddy Krueger or Jason
I
Voorhees.
mean, dude, that'd be amazing. That would be everything I love about life all in one. To get him fighting Jason X in space, like, yeah, why not? And I mean, why not? Who can say that to me, like, to really fight a monster like that, like a mythical monster like that, you need a mythical hero. What's more mythical heroic than a luchador,
Yeah, and that's one of the things. The very first movie that Michael and I took a look at was Santo and Blue Demon versus the Monsters, which was a cross between Mad Monster Party and Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein.
Absolutely.
And it was, I mean, it's a great fun movie. It's a movie, I think, someone who's not familiar with luchador movies, just to watch that will get an idea of the kind of crazy, delightful, delicious, kitschy, fun that it is. But, and then what I love about these films, another thing I love about these films is Michael and I are always going, okay, now, was there a previous film where they fought this guy, or how come, wait, this is a different girlfriend? There's no continuity.
Oh, no, there's none. You don't need it.
They are completely episodic.
Yeah, but I mean, it's sort of, but again, like, to go back to it, it's sort of James Bondish in that way. Like, the character is the draw, and then the world around him changes every time. And you just kind of accept that. It's like, well, of course his life is completely different this week than it was last week. Like, that's the kind of free-swinging cat he is,
And, yeah, with turtleneck sweaters and blazers and
oh, yeah, man.
Convertibles.
That lucha suit aesthetic, man, that's, like, my favorite thing. Because, I'm a big guy myself, so, like, I always appreciated the lucha body, that barrel torso that's, like, made for a double-breasted suit. You know, and they rocked it, man. They still do. Like, luchadors still know how to dress when you see them in private life. They do like Andrade, total clothes horse.
Now, you are an author, as we speak that as we pointed out, and one of the books you have written, and my main draw to bring you on here was a delightful love letter that you wrote to the luchador, genre, Rancor, Life in Grudge City.
Oh, thank you, man, so much. Yeah, no, that was a collaboration with Keith Rainville, who I mentioned before. That was based on a story idea that he had, and then I adapted that to novella, and he published it through his imprint for Parts Unknown Publishing. And that's exactly what it was. It was kind of our way to write our own luchador movie without needing, $100 million to make a movie.
Right. It had all the elements, all the tropes, for, better or worse, whatever trope we're talking about, weaved into that. And my only complaint is it's obviously setting up for more.
Yeah, no, we had a bunch more planned, man. But it's just it all comes down to the numbers. And,
I know. Both Michael and I have been published ourselves, and we've had projects fall the wayside because of numbers.
Oh yeah.
But no, throw out a little bit about Rancor. Let our listeners know, other than just my gushing about how much I enjoyed reading it.
No, man. So it really was, our idea was kind of a buddy cop sort of peck and paw take on Lucha Libre. So we wanted to do a story about a Rudo and a Technico who had been, the biggest feud in Lucha in their day, And then we've kind of flashed forward to decades later, and it's set in this fictional border town because we wanted to write, again, we're writing in English, to an American audience. So we set it sort of in a border town that's a melding of American and Mexican culture, but where Lucha Libre it used to be king, but it's sort of fallen on hard times. And in the world of Rancor, luchadors really were the crime fighters and kind of superheroes of their day in real life. And that's also kind of turned. We start the story with the last luchador that works with the police being let go by the police captain, and the police captain is devastated to do it because he's a lifelong fan of this guy. And it's actually one of my favorite scenes in the whole book. But that's really what we wanted to capture. We wanted to capture the idea of former glory and the former cultural status of this thing is now sort of fading. And then the Technico and the Rudo are brought back together to sort of like fight a common enemy. And they have to kind of reconcile their past to move into the future.
Yeah, and again, like I said, I couldn't put it down once I got going on it, and and this is, I read it early. I mean, I am relatively new to the luchador genre myself. I started doing a little research because as a writer myself, I wanted to do a project that had luchador ties to it, and the rabbit hole I went deeper and deeper and deeper. And then discovered it, and this is why I'm like, oh, well, I got to get my pal Michael on to talk about this, because I know he loves these kind of movies too. And we have both been discovering, luchadors together on this.
No, man, it's a really cool thing to do, and I love that you're doing it, because I really it's what I try to do with my own work and my own stuff is just get more people in an American context to like really get into the stuff and appreciate the influence it's had on our culture, because it's had a lot of influence, and also in its raw form and just how good it actually is. So I totally commend you both.
Yeah, well, that's all selfishness, because the long game here is I'll get more people interested into it, so when I finally release my product, they'll know what I'm talking about, right?
I mean, hey, man, we're all self-promotional horse here. Like, yeah. I totally get
it. Michael.
Yeah, Matt. So you used a couple of terms there. So and for people like me who are green who might be listening, explain what a Rudo and a Technico are.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. So the Technico, it's very simple. Technico's the good guy, the Rudo's the bad guy, and in an American wrestling context, the Technico would be the baby face and the Rudo would be the heel if you're more comfortable with American professional wrestling terms. But that's what it comes down to. It's good guy versus bad guy, hero versus villain.
Yeah. And we will be, of course, share all the links to where you can find this book. Now let's talk about your other wrestling book. Kind of a completely different vein, correct?
Oh, yeah, totally different vein, and it's something I'm very excited about. It's actually my first middle grade novel, my first book for kids, sort of ages 8 to 12 range, and it's called Bump, and that just came out January of this year from Catherine Teagan Books. Really excited about that, and it's been great since it came out, and I've actually got to see kids getting into what I'm doing, and that was sort of my way to tell my own story of going through wrestling school as a kid, because I literally grew up at a wrestling school. But also kind of bring in some other elements, like the main character in Bump is a young girl instead of a young boy, because I have all nieces, like those are the kids I'm surrounded by. I have 20 million cousins, and all the kids I'm around are my nieces, and they're all. I come from a very mixed racial family, so they're all these little brown girls whose parents are Mexican immigrants, and I wanted to write something for them as well. So it sort of became a melding of those two things. So it's in English, it's set in America, it's about a wrestling school, but it's also a wrestling school that was opened by an old luchador. So I bring in those elements and get to use that to tell the story. And it's just about this little girl dealing with grief who's lost her dad, and she, sort of the way I did when I was a kid, she finds this wrestling school, and it sort of helps her find her family. She feels very isolated in the world, and sort of work through the things she's going through by getting into professional wrestling.
Okay, I sort of see something forming here. Like almost every luchador movie I've seen, the femme fatale has her Tio.
Yeah.
And so you're the Tio to all of these nieces.
Yeah. True.
Yeah, I see it playing out there. Yeah.
No, I hadn't thought about that as a parallel, but I like that. No, I'll be the Tio fighting off the bats. I'm cool with that, which we'll talk about a little later. But.
Like one of the flicks I watched, and Michael and I haven't reviewed it yet, but it's one I saw on the side. was Champions of Justice.
Oh yeah.
And that's like the Avengers movie of luchador movies.
Very much.
I mean, the only one missing was Santo, I think. But like the 5 wrestlers that made up that team, that superhero team, they all had nieces that were in a beauty pageant.
Right.
And and then even the movie we're going to talk about today, there's a TO, but the Champions of Justice was my first introduction to Emil Mascaras, and I saw him that he's translated 1,000 Masks, correct?
Yeah, the Man of 1,000 Masks.
Yeah, Man of 1,000 Masks. And in Champions of Justice, the scene where I was first introduced to him, he's in the locker room, and he, with basically facing the camera, he changes mask without you seeing his face. And it wasn't.
Oh yeah, that was a signature film move. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't a special effect or anything. I mean, it was amazing how he pulled the one mask up from under his chin while he was placing the new mask under his chin, and just pulled one off and pulled one up at the same time. And that's when I went, this guy's friggin' cool.
Well, since we're doing Lucha 101, you got to point out that that is one of the biggest things about old school luchador culture is you don't see these guys without their masks. You don't see it unless they lose it in the ring. It doesn't matter whether they're in public, whether they're in a tuxedo, whether they're swimming. You never see them without the mask. The mask is sacred to a luchador.
No, yeah, and that's what in this movie that we're talking about, Las Vampiras, or She Vampires, features Mil Mascaras, and he doesn't wear 1,000 Masks in this movie, but it's a good maybe 12 or 15.
Oh yeah, man, more costume changes than Cher. It's one of my favorite things. It's awesome. Yeah, I rewatched that just waiting for him to bust out those new looks because he cycles through the masks, and each one is better than the other. And Mil always had he was always accessorizing properly, like the rest of the gimmick always matched the mask. He has that great one in the movie that's like all the concentric circles.
Yes.
Like he's trying to hypnotize you with his face. I love that one. It's like one of my favorites.
Yeah, when we first see him in the movie, he's flying an airplane.
Like you do.
Like they all know how to do. And he looks like he's got his bathrobe on, which is, I'm a casual flyer as well.
Yeah, out of bed, jump in a plane. And
then later, like he when he's exploring crypts, he's got his sequence red, Matador coat on.
Oh yeah, the Liberace outfit. I mean that in the best way possible.
But before we get too far bringing up with this movie, Las Vampiras has it's not the only luchador movie featuring John Carradine, but I love how this movie opens up with an introduction with him discussing vampires.
Oh yeah, man, John Carradine, absolute legend. If you're not familiar with him, classic films like Stagecoach with John Wayne, Grapes of Wrath. He was the preacher in that one. Just like one of those legendary old school Hollywood guys that started in the 30s and then by the 70s found himself doing B monster movies because you gotta pay the bills, man. But he was still John Carradine, and that's what I love. I don't think it's in any way a shameful thing. I love seeing these guys bring real gravitas and real acting chops to these kind of cheesy movies,
Because when first introduced to his vampire character, I was like, oh, poor John Carradine. He's just playing the fool. He's playing the idiot. But we find out that that's not the case.
Oh no, not at all, man. He's like, spoiler alert. I don't know if you want to say it later.
Yeah, we'll save it for later. But John Carradine chews up scenery like a vampire on the necks of,
Oh yeah, absolutely. Total scene stealer. He had that crazy, just unique delivery about him that he always had, and it just got even wackier as he got older. That very distinct voice, almost like he's, making a kissing motion with his mouth with every word he says, and he was just mesmerizing to look at. He just didn't look like other people. He had sort of like an elastic face to him, and just a really amazing character actor. Like, that dude just popped in any role you put him in. And again, total chameleon too, by the way. Like, just the 2 movies I mentioned before, he plays like this really slick, Old West card sharp, all in black, silver cane, silver flask, smooth Southern manners and Stagecoach, and then he's this like wild hillbilly preacher in Grapes of Wrath. Like, the dude could do anything.
So this film, we only have one wrestling match in this film, and
Yes.
they're not trying like a lot of the Santos movie. He has to do his monster fighting and investigating in between matches.
Right.
This one, he starts off with a wrestling match, and then the next wrestling match is pretty much canceled because one of his opponent turns up missing.
Yes, and that's how he gets involved in the whole vampire mythos and mystery, because he respects his opponents.
And this is the second Mil Mascaras movie, if I remember correctly. Now, he has like a buddy at the beginning of this movie, but he ditches him real quick for that reporter.
Right, yeah, the reporter / kind of paranormal investigator sort of Carlos, I believe his name is.
Yeah, Carlos, he's a total Kolchak vibe.
Yeah, very Night Stalker-ish, yeah, totally. Very much so, yeah.
What do you think of so far, Mike, as far as we've discussed the movie?
Yeah, well, first of all, Carlos Meyer, who you have to say his first and last name together because everybody does.
Yeah,
Carlos. It's Carlos Meyer.
Yeah, total Kolchak vibe. I really dug him. I loved his TV interview where he's introduced. But I am a big John Carradine fan as well. Like, I'm learning about luchador movies, but I'm all about like the classic like Universal monster movies, and I'm a big Western fan too. So like I've seen him play Dracula, in the Universal films, but I've also seen him play Dracula versus Billy the Kid. Yeah, he's quite a man, and I always love Carradine when he shows up, and I think this is the first time that I remember seeing him kind of in his later years. So I was very kind of excited to see, how does this young, very lean dude that I kind of seen a lot of his stuff, like how does he age? And so that was quite fun. And like Dan, I kind of went on that journey with, oh no, he's playing the buffoon. But then you find out what's really going on, and it's pretty awesome.
No, absolutely, yeah. He worked right up until the end, though, as far as I remember, man. He popped up in all kinds of. I think he was in The Howling. Like that was I think that was probably his last really big.
Oh, I did see them. That's right.
Yeah. He was like the old sad werewolf guy in the werewolf community in The Howling. I think that was his last like really big movie.
Now, again, in this movie we have an investigator, the police who.
Their entire job is just to laugh at everybody else.
Yeah. I love Mil Mascaras is in 100%. This is Vampires. I saw bats fly out of that car.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. He's dropping. Mil Mascaras has got the old Buffy the Vampire Slayer library books. He's breaking down what vampires do. He's letting you know what kind of weather vampires need to thrive. Like
right. Yeah.
I think there's that one scene where he's talking to the girl, and he's like, there was this vampire attack, but it was too hot or some shit, so they went away. Yeah. Like they need a mild climate.
Yeah, and I like that was like his assistant who ends up getting the ugly end of a bite and disappearing.
That happened a lot to the hot assistants in luchador movies, unfortunately. Yeah.
But he gets over it rather quickly. No problem. I mean.
He's gonna have a new one next week. Every week.
Of course, yeah. I mean, I we were talking about Santo earlier, and he would have a couple girlfriends a movie, not just one every other movie.
You can't tie those guys down, man. They're gonna fly free. It's just their nature.
Way off the path here, but I don't remember any Blue Demon movie I've seen. He's not the ladies' man though. He doesn't have time. That
Blue Demon was actually always, people do call him more the Bat. It's like Santo was Superman and Blue Demon was Batman.
Right.
Like that's the American context they always put it in. Blue Demon was the more serious, brooding, I'm going to hold this chess piece and contemplate it for a long time kind of guy. And then Santo was laying all the pipe. So that was kind of the dynamic that they had.
Now, there's one mask he has, two masks that he has in this movie, that basically one with a big star on that covers up the whole face, and then one with the star on top that looks very almost Captain American-ish. So
right.
But let's talk about the she vampires.
let's talk about the she-vampires, because why not? So we should. I don't know if we've made it clear. This movie is about a coven of vampires. I mean, it's in the title, but
right.
That's what he's investigating is, this coven of vampires that they crashed a plane and they killed. I think Black Man was the name of his opponent. I don't.
Yes.
Not the greatest name, but the time's worth the work. And so he's concerned.
The African champion Black Man. Yes.
Exactly. Yes. So it's a coven of vampires. Nobody believes him or Carlos Meyer about the vampires, so they got to handle this business themselves. And they go in search of the she-vampires.
Who all wear a green, I don't know, what bodysuit?
Yeah, if it wasn't painted on, it looked like it.
A green catsuit with kind of the webbing underneath the arms. Because the entire movie they are doing these aerobicize moves with their arms to, so they don't get the flabby arms apparently.
Yeah, it's like vampire aerobics.
I kind of had flashbacks to those old jazzercise videos from the 80s that would come on.
I think that's what their inspiration was, honestly. I think all of that. I think all the Suzanne Summers stuff when we were kids started with the she-vampires. They really led the way, and they don't get enough credit for it.
The she-vampires are basically two catty vampires vying for control of the coven. One's the former wife of Dracula, and I don't know the other one who's basically in charge. I don't know what her resume was.
I don't recall the exact dynamic because it's been a minute since the last time I saw it, even though I've seen it like a million times. But yeah, no, there's a lot of Game of Thrones politics going on within the vampire. And then like I do remember the one's pitch was it was multifaceted though, because it wasn't just we want to make the humans our food. Excuse me. It was also like they're going to exterminate us and we need to stop that, and the rest of you all aren't taking this seriously, so I got to run this shit. There was a lot of nuance to the vampire political hierarchy within the coven. Yeah,
there was a definite plan rather than just to feed, and up until Carlos Meyer and Mil Mascaras come up to ruin their plans. Now they pop in, they fight off their enslaved hype.
Yeah, they're muscle boys. And, I remember the muscle boy fight. That might be earlier than you're talking about. Actually.
Yeah, hypnotized, and I love how they all have these gold chest and breastplates and back plates, but yet our boy Mil Mascaras can still knock them down with one punch.
Yeah, luchador strength, man. That's science. Science, man.
You know what? Now it dawns on me. I see a lot of Captain Kirk's Kirk Fu, I think, was inspired by luchador fighting.
Oh yeah. That's one of the things I love about the choreography of this movie. You get a lot of chops, you get a lot of monkey flips, you get a lot, but you do get a lot of like almost judo-esque John Wick kind of proto stuff too. A lot of throws, a lot of takedowns.
Yeah, just a slower speed, but still quite hypnotic in its ballet-esque grandeur.
Very much so. And, luchadors, pro wrestlers by definition, case-by-case basis, but the good ones have a kind of lumbering grace and they know how to move, so you're able to sort of sell these fight scenes with stuntmen who you probably got off the street that morning for a ham sandwich and don't really know anything. So, credit where credit's due on that. That's a tough thing to sell.
And a lot of these fight scenes in these luchador movies look like the fight scenes from the old Batman series. Except without the sound effect cards flashing up and with the camera not tilted.
Yeah, that's true. It was an aesthetic, man. It was that mod 60s, acid trip style.
Excuse me. So there's this whole thing, and of course, it turns out, okay, let's talk about Carradine. He's playing this buffoon type, former aged, dementia-ridden vampire, but is he?
That's the question. It's very subtle. You're not meant to ask it until you get later in the movie.
It turns out that he, that's just a ploy as he's trying to vie for control, like you say, in a Game of Thrones type situation.
Yeah. No, he's the total Lannister of the movie. Like, you don't see him coming. He's like the Cersei Lannister of the Vampire Coven. Like, everybody discounts him. You know, they think he's just this doddering thing, and then he like wrecks shit, and you find out he's Dracula's successor.
I mean, seriously, early on he's like clapping his hands like a monkey with cymbals and mouth gaped open and amazement of what he's seeing, and then later, I mean, he clicks into this domineering, man in control. He's got his shit figured out, and
yeah,
he's working here. And this is when we see John Carradine really shine in this movie, where what you saw before, where you felt sorry for this poor aged actor playing this stupid role. You're going, oh my God, he's a great actor.
Oh yeah, so that's when John Carradine becomes John Carradine, and the chronology gets mixed up, but when I watch a movie, I always feel like he knows it's like I'm competing with, God, I don't know coffee sauce. I'm competing with, Peter Cushing. I'm competing with Christopher Lee. I'm competing with these great, B vampire actors. I got to bring my Dracula A game when I'm finally revealed as what I am. So he's going for it, man.
And so Mil Mascaras gets himself in a situation where he defeats all the minions, and he's going to be married off to the head of the coven. And they keep, the one thing that disappointed me about this movie is they keep hinting that Satan himself will be at this marriage.
Right.
We never get to see Satan.
It's more a metaphorical thing. It's kind of like the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. It's taken as like the body of Christ. He's here in spirit, sort of thing. Also, I don't think they could really afford it budget wise.
Yeah, but with the Luchador movie, I never know.
Yeah, that's true. Satan could show up. He could be another luchador, like played by Andre the Giant. You don't know what's going to happen to these things.
They got a blue demon right there.
So this whole, I mean, of course, in perfect. Now this was a lot of these movies. It seems to be a lot of build up, a lot of setup, and then you get this sense that the producer runs over the director and goes, "We got about $8 left."
and it just kind of ends.
Wrap it up.
And it's one of the ones where he isn't really even in the finale, right? Like Mil Mascaras sort of disappears
right
at the end.
Right.
Yeah.
Where they're looking around like, who was that masked man?
Yeah. And the thing you gotta remember about a lot of these flicks, it's like Mil would show up for like a few days and they'd shoot all his stuff out and then put him on the poster, and then they would fill everything in around him. So when you really think about how much screen time Mil actually has, it's not that much in comparison to everything else that's going on in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Because he wasn't there every day. So he probably did his 4 or 5 days on it and was like, all right, guys, I got to move on to my next thing. Figure out how to wrap this bitch up without me. Like, I got to go.
And I think he even gets fourth billing.
Does he?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a universal grindhouse thing. That was true in Mexico or America. It's like you put Mil in the movie, you put him on the poster when he only really shot a few days, and you put him as many scenes as you could. But he's in a lot more in this one than he is in some other ones. So you don't really feel it when you watch it.
And in every scene that he's in, he does command the scene. I mean, there's no doubt that he's the hero, that he's the guy who's forwarding the story along. He's going to get to the bottom of it.
Absolutely,
He's going to be the one that saves the day. I don't think
with a giant sword, which he does. We got to talk about the giant sword fight. I mean, come on.
There's a giant sword fight, and I also like the swinging ball of spikes.
Oh yeah, well you got to have a swinging ball of spikes.
Where I'm gathering what they thought in their head. I mean, it's a very Dungeons and Dragons type trap, where I'm thinking it was like a long corridor with a number of swinging balls that they had to get by, like let's say 6 or 8 of them. But the way they shot it, it appears that they're just having complications trying to get around one.
Yeah, I think the practical effects on that one, it was sort of like the shark from Jaws, but with swinging spike balls.
Right.
Like there wasn't a lot you could do with them. So I think at one point, he's batting them out of the way with his hand because fuck it, we got to get out of the movie.
And then a lot of these movies tend to end with the the demise, the questionable demise of the villain or monster with flames that take up the screen, so we really don't see them dead, or we don't see them die.
I mean, hey, again, you gotta save on that practical effects budget. So you just assume that they were consumed in flames, but can't see behind the flames in the foreground.
Michael, anything you took away from this movie that we haven't brought up yet?
This haven't brought up yet. I don't know. I mean, it was just, the whole thing is amazing. It's the elaborate fight ritual of the two vampire women as they're trying to take control of the coven.
Right. Let me interrupt you here. We cannot fail to mention the dance recital.
Yeah.
Of the, each one has their own little special dance, it looks like. Because a lot of these luchador movies, and we've talked about it, have song and dance numbers in them.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because they pop into a nightclub or something to watch, take a little break from fighting monsters to catch, a cabaret show. This one did not have a cabaret show or a nightclub, but it did have this little recital number to start the, challenge.
And I mean, I think they went with moderation in this instance, and I respect that. They're like, we're gonna do something more serious here. We got John Carradine. Like, let's not make this Bollywood. Like, let's make it somber. Let's make it more avant-garde. It was very avant-garde. You gotta give us that.
Yeah, but Carradine at this point playing his buffoon characters looks like a dirty old man.
Yeah.
Watching these catch-suited ladies flap their arms. And
yeah, those are the moments when I wonder what was going on in John Carradine's head too. Like what did the director ever say to him? I don't know if he spoke Spanish. I assume he didn't. But like, I just wonder like what he thought about like a scene like that where it's like, okay, I'm reacting to the hypnotic dance of the jumpsuit clad vampire women. Like, what's my character's process right now? Or was he just like how long do I have to keep making these silly faces until I can go to the bar,
Right. And then, of course, that cape he was wearing was right out of the Halloween store from that old closed-down Kmart.
That is true, but hey, he made that look like the most luxurious, made it play like the most luxurious vampire cape he could, man. He performed the hell out of that thing. So you gotta give it to him on that score. He made the most of what they literally handed him.
Anything else about this movie you want to throw out there before we give our ratings? Matt, I don't know if you know, but we give it a rating of 1 to 5 masks.
Oh, that's a good system.
Golden mask. So anything you want to point out? Any little nifty scene that we forgot to mention?
The one thought I had that I didn't vocalize was I give the dude who played Carlos Myers a lot of credit because he holds his own with Mill in the fight scenes. He's really going for it. They got the one in the apartment or whatever where they're fighting the thugs, and he's really swinging for the fences. And it's not easy when you've got a bare-chested luchador throwing karate chops and flipping guys over. Because, you just end up sort of being an extra. But Carlos asserts himself. He really does. He rolls up his sleeves and, like, he really goes for it. And I want to give that actor props for that. I forget his name just now. But it was a very well done buddy cop element to it. And it's not easy playing opposite a Mil Mascaras in a buddy cop dynamic. So
no, and that would be great to see Carlos again in another Mills movie. I doubt he does show up in another one, but that would definitely be worthwhile.
For sure, I don't think he did either, but it's something we could rediscover now. If we get the second or third generation luchadors, and we get the son of Carlos Myers, and he has the same mustache, and we revisit it. Why not? We're revisiting and rebooting everything. Why can't we reboot Carlos Myers?
Michael, anything?
Yeah, I'll just second Carlos Meyer. Like he holds his own as like a partner to Mil Mascaras. He's not a sidekick. He's like a normal looking dude, but he holds his own. And I'll just shout out to Mil Mascaras himself. Like, I really dug him. Like, he and Neutron are kind of like my two guys now. Like, I think I probably said this earlier in another episode, but when it comes to superheroes, I tend to like kind of breeze past the A-listers, and I start I want to dig into like the B and the C-listers to kind of figure out, okay, who's my favorite going to be. And right now, like, this Neutron and Mil Mascaras kind
Neutron, oh yeah, man. Neutron versus Los Asesinos del Karate is one of my all-time favorite lucha movies. If you guys haven't done that one, I will come back and do the show if you do that.
Okay, I just picked out a new movie that I ordered today, but I did see that on the list, so we are definitely doing that one down the line. So we'll definitely have you back for that one.
Rock out.
Yeah, but Mil Mascaras, I mean, super charismatic. He's got a great personality and attitude about him that, like Santo and Blue Demon are, they're fairly serious. They kind of seem like they're taking everything very seriously. Mil Mascaras has a little twinkle in his eye.
Yeah, Mil Mascaras was very much that almost like second generation, who kind of brought like the disco to it. It was like very up and down, straight laced. It was like what Hogan did in the 80s with wrestling. He brought the flash and the pomp and this kind of different, hipper sort of vibe. And he was definitely that guy. And in his prime, because, when I was coming up as a wrestler, like on the indie scene, Mil would do shows now and then, but it was like old Mil who didn't care anymore. So like that was one of my first exposures was Mil Mascaras, was this guy where they would pay an exorbitant amount of money to come in and not really do anything. And then I saw movies like this from back in the day. I was like, oh man, I get it now. I get how he got to that point, because he really was the man back in the day.
All right, Michael, let's start with you. How many gold masks do you give Los Vampiras?
Man, I'm still saving 5 masks for some unseen movie in the future here, so I'm gonna be conservative and give it 4.
All right, Matt, how about you?
It's tough, man. I didn't come prepared to do this. I would have to say, like, on a scale of all the lucha movies I've seen, this one is pretty standard, honestly, in a lot of ways, and I'd probably go with a 3 straight up for it, because like there are better Mil Mascaras movies even. But because of John Carradine, I think you got to bump it up to a 4 as well for me. Strictly on the strength of seeing old John Carradine in there, just being awesome.
Yeah, I'm going to have to echo that same thought. I was thinking it's more of a 3 type movie. Nothing really fancy, or it stood out to me. I mean, we've seen everything before in the, half dozen movies we've seen before, but John Carradine definitely bumped it up a notch as the villain of the movie. So I'm going to give it 4. So this gets a solid 4 gold mask out of 5 for Los Vampiras.
That's strong, man. That is very strong.
I think I'm the only one that's given a movie 5 masks, and I gave that Hurricane Ramirez.
Oh, the man, yeah. Just on legendary status alone, I can't fault you there, man.
I thought it was so Capra-esque and just a beautiful movie, and I just loved everything about it. Michael's holding out for that ultimate superhero movie he can drop the 5 on, I think.
Well, when we do Neutron versus Los Asesinos del Karate, maybe we can get it out of him. Neutron versus robot assassins who do karate. So, I mean, come on.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're already halfway there with Neutron himself, so.
Yeah, all day.
All right, Matt, let's get all your plugs in. What do you got?
Oh, man. So if you want to find me online, I'm usually lurking around Twitter at Matt F. and Wallace. You can check out my website, matt-wallace.com. As I mentioned before, out right now I've got Bump, my first middle grade novel. Great for fans of wrestling and non-fans of wrestling. And then in January of next year, I have my second middle grade novel coming out. It's one I'm really excited about, very personal story for me. It's called The Supervillain's Guide to Being a Fat Kid. Set in a world of real superheroes and villains. It's about a fat kid dealing with things that fat kids deal with in school at that age all the time. I was one of those kids, so it's a really special book to me, and I'm hoping people will go and pre-order that and check that out. I also do an adult fantasy series. If you're more, we talked about Game of Thrones earlier. If you're more into that genre, it's called the Savage Rebellion series. The second book just came out in July. It's called Savage Bounty. You can find all these things on my website, but I would appreciate if you go check all of them out.
And let's not forget Rancor Life in Grudge City.
Course.
If you
Let's
are
not forget that.
listening to this podcast and smiled or thought how cool luchadors were at any time while listening, you will love this book. It is a fun read, and it's, like I said, mentioned before, it's a love letter to the whole genre of luchador movies.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Yes, please do go pick that up. That is still available from Parts Unknown Publishing, and I still love that book very much.
All right. Thank you so much, Matt, for joining us. We will hold you to it. We will get you to come back to do the next Neutron flick that we do. And we will also be sending you a special guest gift that we send to all our guests. So I will get your mailing information later. And again, Matt, thank you so much for joining us.
Ah, man, swag. That's awesome. Thank you so much. I was not expecting that. No, I had a great time. I look forward to coming back and talking more Lucha Cinema with y'all.
All right, super. Thank you so much, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
And Michael, see you again in 2 weeks.
Do it.
All right, I'll let you know what flick we'll be discussing a little bit later. Anybody you want to revisit again who we've already done?
Oh, man. Neutron's fantastic. Bill Moscatis. I would totally want to see another one of his. And then I definitely want to expand my my Santo and Blue Demon repertoire as well. So.
All right, I'll figure something out and let you know. And again, thanks everybody for listening. Be sure to check out luchadorgringo.com for our website where you can find the podcast on whatever podcast format you listen to. And also follow Luchador Gringo on Twitter, and there's a Facebook page where we keep you up to date on when the next episode's coming out, as well as share little bits of information that we uncover about the luchador genre and share some of the beautiful, beautiful movie posters. So again, gracias everybody, and buenas noches.